Okay, so this is now I am going to talk about the vapor compression cycle actually. So in a vapor compression cycle, as I have told you in the previous video lecture, that there are four components. One component is evaporator, the second component is compressor, the third component is condenser, and the fourth component is throttle valve. So let us focus on the state point number four. State point number 4 actually. At state point number 4, we have wet refrigerant actually. So wet refrigerant means it is in liquid plus vapor state. So this is point number 4 actually. So here the refrigerant is in liquid plus vapor state, which is nothing but wet refrigerant. Now this wet refrigerant is at very low temperature and low pressure. Okay. So the refrigerant is in liquid state also, liquid or wet vapor state actually. The dryness fraction may be around 0.1 or 0.2 actually. So as soon as it enters into the evaporator, it takes away the heat from the space to be cooled. Now assume you have a refrigerator in which the evaporator section is at the top of the refrigerator, where the refrigerant is flowing in the pipes actually, and the temperature there is somewhere around minus 25 degrees Celsius. Minus 25. Once the temperature is minus 25 degrees Celsius, and you have brought certain products from the market, okay, and those products would be at the atmospheric temperature. So I am considering this space to be cooled as those products which you have kept in the refrigerator. So their temperature may be somewhere around 30 degrees Celsius. So it means the products to be cooled are at 30 degrees Celsius, whereas the refrigerant which is flowing in the evaporator is at minus 25 degrees Celsius. So you know heat always flows from high temperature to low temperature. So heat will start flowing from the products to be cooled to the refrigerant which is flowing in the evaporator. Now this is a sort of latent heat. So once the latent heat is given to the wet refrigerant, it will change in its state. So its state will change to the dry saturated vapor. So you can see the TS diagram here. Here state point 4 is the wet state for the refrigerant, and state point 1 is the dry saturated vapor. And why this change has taken place? Because the refrigerant was initially wet, and there has been certain heat transfer to the refrigerant from the products to be cooled, and this heat transfer is represented by small QE or capital QE dot. So these terms you will understand later on. Now once again, coming back to the schematic diagram here, I hope you are able to hear me. Please answer.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So at state point 1, we have the dry saturated vapor. Dry saturated vapor means the dryness fraction here is x is equal to 1. Okay. So x is equal to 1. Now consider a situation. You have ample quantity of refrigerant available with you, and it is entering into the evaporator at state point 4 and leaving at state point 1. Once you have the ample quantity of the refrigerant available with you, and if it is not harming the environment also, then what we can do is we can only you have a single evaporator where from one side the refrigerant is entering and the dry saturated vapor refrigerant is leaving at state point 1, and we are throwing this into the atmosphere. So that can happen actually if we have the refrigerant available at a very low cost and in ample quantity. Okay, but that is not the situation. Now the situation is that the refrigerant which is going to the atmosphere may cause some harmful effect like ozone depletion, or maybe global warming, or maybe some other types of the effect which we may not be knowing today actually. Okay, so our purpose is to reuse this refrigerant which has been converted from the liquid refrigerant to the vapor refrigerant. So how it has been converted from the liquid to the vapor? It has been converted by the addition of the heat to it, and this heat is basically latent heat. And if we throw away this latent heat which it has taken, then we can bring it back to its original state, which is state point number 4 at low temperature and low pressure. Now consider a situation. I just told you that the temperature in the evaporator of a refrigerator is minus 25 degrees Celsius. Can I throw this heat which has been added to the refrigerant to the surroundings? Give me the answer. I can't. I can't throw it to the, yeah. I can't throw it to the surroundings. The reason is simple, because the surrounding temperature nowadays it is around 30 degrees Celsius. In peak summer it may be 45 degrees Celsius. So if I have to throw the heat which the refrigerant has taken for conversion from wet to the dry saturated vapor, and this heat is to be thrown to the surroundings, then the temperature of the refrigerant should be higher than the temperature of the surrounding. So if the temperature of the surrounding is 30, that means if I am considering that T ambient,
Hello, excuse me, sir, you are not audible.
I'm not audible. Okay. Uh, so till now, what you could hear, I was explaining about the process of heat addition to the evaporator. Hello. Tell me, are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir.
But some students are saying that they are unable. So anybody else who is facing the problem? Okay. So most of you saying that I am audible. Okay. So once again, I will share my screen. So is the screen visible to you?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay. So I was telling you, if I have to reject the heat from the refrigerant to the surrounding, if I consider that the refrigerant temperature is 30, ambient temperature or the surrounding temperature is 30 degrees Celsius, and if I want to reject heat from the refrigerant to this ambient temperature, then the temperature of the refrigerant should be higher than this value. It can be 35 degrees Celsius or say 40 degrees Celsius. Only then the process of heat rejection will take place. And for this, I use a compressor basically. So what I will do with the help of a compressor, I will compress this refrigerant isentropically so that its temperature increases. So the purpose of the compressor is to increase the temperature of the refrigerant. Its purpose is not to increase the pressure, but without increasing pressure, I can't increase the temperature. So you can see in the TS diagram that process 1 to 2 is the isentropic compression process, and at 2 it is the temperature which is higher than the ambient temperature. So I am going to draw a line here. This is the T ambient now. Okay, this is the ambient temperature. So this is 30 degrees Celsius, and this temperature here is, let us say, 35 degrees Celsius, whereas temperature at 2 is somewhere around 70 degrees Celsius. Okay, it is around 70 degrees Celsius. So that means after the compression, the temperature has gone to 70 degrees Celsius. Initially at state point 1, it was minus 25 degrees Celsius. So at 2, because the temperature is quite high, the heat transfer will automatically take place to the surrounding. So in the last lecture, I was telling you what is the superheat horn. So this portion is actually the superheat horn. This is the extra work which is needed to be done to compress the refrigerant. So it is superheat horn. This I have already told you in the previous lecture. Okay. Now at 2, what is happening at 2? Okay. At 2, now the temperature is 70 degrees Celsius. Now this refrigerant is being passed to the condenser now. So in the condenser, what is happening now? Condenser is a heat exchanger. So the refrigerant, and it can be either water cooled or it can be air cooled also. In any case, whatever the type of the condenser it may be, the heat will be rejected from the condenser to the surrounding air. So here, this heat is being rejected to the surroundings. So this is surrounding at, okay, it is surrounding at 30 degrees Celsius. So heat will be rejected to the surrounding. So what will happen? How the heat is getting rejected? If I consider, if I see this state 2, it is dry, it is superheated vapor actually. Okay, at 2 it is superheated vapor. So from 2 to 2 dash, this point, okay, this point is 2 dash. This is the dry saturated vapor. So from 2 to 2 dash, it is the sensible heat lost by the refrigerant. And from 2 dash to 3, from 2 dash to 3, it is the latent heat lost by the refrigerant. So from 2 to 2 dash, it is the sensible heat, and from 2 dash to 3, it is the latent heat which has been lost by the refrigerant. And at 3, the temperature and pressure are still high. Temperature at T3, T3 is the condenser temperature, it is high, and TC is the condenser pressure, it is also high. So what we want to do now is we want to reduce this pressure and temperature to the evaporator pressure and a temperature which is equal to minus 25 degrees Celsius. So like in the reversed Carnot cycle, we were using a turbine. Here we are not going to use a turbine, rather we are going to use a throttling valve. Okay, so you can see a throttle valve is there after point number 4. So throttle valve, as I told you in the last lecture, it could be a capillary tube, it could be a automatic expansion valve, or it could be a thermostatic expansion valve. A throttling valve, a throttling device, if I consider as a capillary tube. Now capillary tube is very long in length. Okay, capillary tube is very long in length, and its diameter is also very small. So in fluid mechanics, you have studied that when the liquid enters in from a larger diameter to a smaller diameter pipe, there is a drop in pressure. And when there is friction between the fluid and the surface, then also there will be frictional pressure drop. So because of these two pressure drops, the refrigerant pressure decreases from PC to PE, PC to PE, and there is no change in the enthalpy of the refrigerant during process 3 to 4. And this process 3 to 4 is the isenthalpic process. So once again, I would like to tell you how the pressure drop is taking place in the uh, capillary tube. See, you remember the formula. You remember the formula. Delta P is equal to 4FL V square divided by 2GD. Now you see, you just focus on this equation. This is Darcy V Swatch equation. So F is the friction coefficient, L is the length of the pipe, V square is the velocity, G acceleration due to gravity, and capital D is the diameter of the capillary tube. So you know, as I told you, the diameter of the capillary tube is very, very small, and the length of the capillary tube is very large. So what does it mean? When the length is large and the diameter is small, the value of delta P is large. So because of this reason, there will be pressure drop in the capillary tube, and this will reduce the temperature also, because when the pressure reduces, the saturation temperature also goes down. So this is what is happening in a expansion device. So 3 to 4 shows the process of isenthalpic expansion, and you can see I have shown it by a dotted line because throttling is always a irreversible process. Throttling is always an irreversible process. So that is why I have shown it by a dotted line. Now from once we reach at state point 4, so you can see we have finally reached to the same state point from where we started this cycle actually. So once again at state point 4, we have the liquid refrigerant at low pressure, low temperature, and we can use it once again in the evaporator. So I hope, and this cycle will be repeated again and again, and we will be getting the cooling effect in the evaporator. So if you have any question about the working of the vapor compression cycle, you can ask me. I'm waiting for your question. Okay, if you don't have any questions, I will explain you the pH diagram. Mainly, we have to use two types of the diagrams to explain the vapor compression cycle. The first one is the TS diagram, and second one is the pH diagram. So in the pH diagram, what you can see is the first process is the heat added to the evaporator from the space or the products to be cooled. Okay, so this is the process 4 to 1 which is happening in the evaporator at the constant pressure, and the constant pressure is PE. PE means evaporator pressure. From 1 to 2, it is the isentropic compression. S is equal to constant. So it is reversible adiabatic compression or isentropic compression. So during this process, the entropy will remain constant. And okay, this 4 to 1, there is QE amount of the heat which is being added to the refrigerant, and during the process 2 to 3, there is heat rejection QC to the surroundings. 2 to 2 dash 2 to 2 dash is the sensible heat lost in the condenser, and 2 dash to 3 is the latent heat lost in the condenser. 3 to 4 is the isenthalpic expansion in the expansion device, which in case of refrigerator and window AC is a capillary tube only. If it is a large plant, large capacity refrigeration plant or air conditioning plant, there we go for a thermostatic expansion valve. For example, if it is a hotel industry where we have to carry out the air conditioning process, then the load is varying continuously. So we won't be using a capillary tube, because capillary tube is used in case of very small appliances like window AC, split AC, refrigerator, and so on. But if it is a large air conditioning plant, large refrigeration plant, where the load is varying, then we have to go for a thermostatic expansion valve. If it is a constant load application where the load is not going to vary, for example, if it is a cold storage or a milk chilling plant, there because the load is constant, we will not go for a thermostatic expansion valve. Rather, we will go for a automatic expansion valve, because the automatic expansion valve is designed for a constant load application, whereas a thermostatic expansion valve is used for a variable load application. So I hope this much part is clear to you. Now let us go for the analysis of the cycle. Now the first process which I am going to discuss is the process 4 to 1. Now what is process 4 to 1? It is heat abstracted at constant pressure in evaporator. In evaporator. Okay, so in the evaporator, it is the constant pressure process. The heat is being added to the refrigerant from the products to be cooled. So refrigerant changes from wet vapor to dry saturated vapor by absorbing latent heat of evaporation from the products to be cooled. This I have already told you. For the evaporator, because evaporator is a open system, we can apply steady flow energy equation to it. Now, how to apply the steady flow energy equation? So this is the steady flow energy equation. What is steady flow energy equation? Delta Q minus delta W is equal to dH plus dKe plus dPe. Delta Q is the heat transfer, delta Ws is the shaft work, dH is the change in enthalpy, and dK is the change in the kinetic energy, dP is the change in the potential energy. Now, if we consider the evaporator, there is not going to be much change in the kinetic energy and potential energy. So what we can do? We can neglect these two terms. So here I have written neglecting kinetic and potential energy changes being negligible. Okay. Then evaporator is a heat exchanger. Since evaporator is a heat exchanger, so and moreover the pressure is also remaining constant in it, and hence there is no shaft. When there is no shaft, there is no shaft work. So delta Ws in the evaporator will also be 0. So we are left with only two terms. This is the equation. So delta Ws is 0, kinetic energy neglected, potential energy neglected. So this is the term which is remaining, and dH is the another term which is remaining. So here you can see delta Q is equal to dH. So I can apply this equation for the process 4 to 1 here, which is shown here in the TS diagram. So I can get, after integration, I will get Q4 to 1 is equal to H1 minus H4. So this is the cooling effect which I am getting in the evaporator. So I am writing it as QE rather than Q4 to 1. So QE is equal to specific refrigerating effect, also known as specific cooling effect. Okay, so both the names pertain to this only, specific refrigerating effect as well as specific cooling effect, and the value is equal to H1 minus H4. And if you see the pH diagram, this is the enthalpy difference. Okay, H1 minus H4, this enthalpy difference corresponds to, this enthalpy difference corresponds to refrigerating effect, specific refrigerating effect. It is equal to H1 minus H4, and it is taking place at constant pressure. Now let us proceed. Okay, now the next part is the total cooling effect. Now what is total cooling effect? Here when I say specific refrigerating effect, the unit is kilojoules per kg. So it means I am talking about 1 kg of the refrigerant, but actually there is refrigerant which is circulating through the system. So let us consider that the mass of the refrigerant which is circulating through the system is mr dot. So total cooling capacity or the refrigerating effect is QE dot, and it is given by mass flow rate of the refrigerant into specific refrigerating effect QE. Mass flow rate of the refrigerant and the specific refrigerating effect is H1 minus H4. So here you can see I have written that MR is the mass flow rate of the refrigerant in kgs per second or kgs per minute, or it could also be kgs per hour. Kg per hour also can be the unit for the mass flow rate of the refrigerant. So any question till now? If you have any questions, you can ask. Okay, so I will proceed further. Now process 2 to 1 to 2. Now process 1 to 2 is isentropic or reversible adiabatic compression in the compressor. And the main purpose of compressor or the function of the compressor is to increase the temperature of the refrigerant so that we can reject heat to the surroundings actually. So once again we can use the steady flow energy equation for this component, and once again we have considered that the changes in the kinetic and the potential energy are negligible. So the value of the steady flow energy equation that remains is delta Q minus delta Ws is equal to dH. And because it is a isentropic or reversible adiabatic compression, so the value of delta Q will be equal to 0 because it is a reversible adiabatic compression, and in a adiabatic compression there is no heat transfer to the system or from the system. So I can now keep the value of delta Q as 0. This is 0 now. So I am left with minus delta Ws is equal to dH. So minus delta Wh, I can integrate this equation from 1 to 2, and when I integrate this equation from 1 to 2, I get Ws from 1 to 2 with a negative sign here is equal to H2 minus H1. And then in the next step, I am taking this minus on the right hand side. So W1 to 2 is equal to minus H2 minus H1. Now one point is to be noted here. H2 is greater than H1. H2 is greater than H1. So H2 minus H1 is positive term. This is a positive quantity. And we have a negative sign outside. So it shows that work is required to be done on the compressor. Negative sign shows work is required to be done on the compressor. So I can also write W compressor is equal to H2 minus H1. So this W compressor is nothing but specific compressor work. So it is also written as WC. So having calculated the WC or specific compressor work, we can calculate the compressor power required. Now what is the compressor power required? Compressor power required is given by WC dot is equal to mass flow rate of the refrigerant into H2 minus H1. So this is the product of specific compressor work and the mass flow rate of the refrigerant. And if the mass flow rate of the refrigerant is in kgs per second and H2 minus H1 is in kilojoules per kg, so the unit of WC will come out to be kilojoules per second, which is actually equal to kilowatt. Okay, so we will get the compressor power in the units of kilowatt. Any question? If you have asked, okay. So if you don't have any question, I will proceed further. The next process is heat rejected in the condenser. So once again, I will show you the diagram here. This is the TS diagram here, and the process is something like this. This is point number 2. This is point number 3. So heat rejected in the condenser is at constant pressure PC. PC is constant. PC stands for constant condenser pressure. So once again, it's a heat exchanger. So I can use the steady flow energy equation given by delta Q minus delta Ws is equal to dH. Once again, there is no shaft in the condenser, so delta Ws is 0. So this quantity goes. So I am left with delta Q is equal to dH. So I can integrate it from 2 to 3. When I integrate this equation from 2 to 3, I get Q2 to 3 is equal to minus H2 minus H3. So actually it would have been H3 minus H2 because I have taken minus sign outside. So it is minus H2 minus H3. And this minus sign shows that heat is rejected in the condenser. So the value of QC. So when I say QC, now it is heat rejected in condenser. If I say Q2 to 3, then it is heat transfer during the process Q2 to 3. But now when I say QC, it is heat rejected in the condenser and it is given by H2 minus H3 because H2 is greater than H3. Okay, so let us proceed further. This is heat rejected by the condenser per kg of the refrigerant. Now we have to calculate the total heat rejected in the condenser. Now how to calculate the total heat rejected in the condenser? It is equal to mass flow rate of the refrigerant into H2 minus H3. So the value will come out to be in kilojoules per second, which is kilowatts. And the value of mass flow rate is in kgs per second, and H2 minus H3 is in kilojoules per kg. The next process is process 3 to 4. It is an isenthalpic expansion in the throttling device. So here if it is a refrigerator, it is a capillary tube. Okay, it is a capillary tube, and during isenthalpic expansion the enthalpy will remain constant, but let us see why it remains constant. So this is once again the equation, steady flow energy equation, delta Q minus delta Ws is equal to dH. Okay, now if you remember exactly, a throttling process is one in which there is no heat transfer. It is adiabatic in nature, first thing. So because it is adiabatic in nature, so the value of delta Q will be equal to 0. So this value is 0. Second, because it's a capillary tube, there is no shaft, so there won't be any shaft work. So delta Ws will also be 0. So we are left only with dH. So dH is equal to 0. So when we integrate this particular equation, we get H1 minus H4 is equal to 0 or H1 is equal to H4. So enthalpy remains constant during this process. Now, having calculated the values of all enthalpies from H1 to H4, okay, there is a mistake here in this particular equation. It is actually H3 minus H4, H3 minus H4. So H3 is actually equal to H4. So H3 was the enthalpy at the exit from the condenser. Now we have to calculate the coefficient of the performance of the vapor compression cycle. So CUP will now be given by specific refrigerating effect divided by specific compressor work. So COP value is equal to QE divided by WC. What is QE? It is specific refrigerating effect, and WC is specific compressor work. If I want it, I would have taken the mass flow rate here also and the mass flow rate here also. If I take both the mass flow rates here, then the numerator will become the total refrigerating effect and the denominator will become total compressor power. And once again, if you see whether I take the specific refrigerating effect and specific compressor work or total refrigerating effect and total compressor work, the final expression will be in terms of QE divided by WC because mass flow rate of the refrigerant will cancel out both from numerator as well as denominator. So final expression for COP is equal to H1 minus H4 divided by H2 minus H1. So this is the expression for the COP. So to calculate COP, we need to calculate H1, H2, H3 and H4. And you already know that H3 is equal to H4. So effectively, we need to calculate only three values. These are H1, H2 and H3. And H4 is already equal to H4. So H4 is, we don't need to calculate H4 actually. Now let us think about how we have to calculate the values of H1. Now if you remember exactly, this is the TS diagram. This is the state point 1 here. Okay. This is state point 1. It is on the dry saturated line 1. So enthalpy H1 should be equal to H corresponding to the value of the evaporator temperature. See, in this, in a numerical problem, you may either be given the value of P or P. Both these are dependent on each other. If you know the evaporator temperature, the evaporator pressure is the saturation pressure corresponding to the evaporator temperature. And simultaneously, if the pressure is given, we can see the saturation temperature corresponding to the evaporator temperature. That means the evaporator is equal to a function of PE, or it is nothing but P saturation. Okay, and this is P saturation. Both are dependent on each other. So that means if we know any one property, if we know the evaporator temperature, I can find out the value of the evaporator pressure from the refrigeration tables. Now you need to have the refrigeration tables with you for solving the numerical problem. So this is how we are going to calculate. So Hg is the enthalpy of the dry saturated vapor corresponding to PE, or I can also say PE. So anything which is given to you, you can calculate the value of H1 from pressure or temperature of the evaporator. And this is the Hg value, dry saturated vapor, and this corresponds to X is equal to 1 also at state point 1. Okay. Now H3. Now what is H3? H3 point is after the condenser. It is somewhere here. Okay. So here the dryness fraction. What is the value of the dryness fraction here? The value of X3 is equal to 0 here. So it is a saturated liquid. So that means when we have to calculate the enthalpy of the saturated liquid, we will calculate the value of HF. Now this HF is to be calculated corresponding to the condenser temperature. TC is the condenser temperature. Okay, so we will calculate H3 corresponding to TC or TC. So anything which is given to us, if it is TC given to us, we will calculate or see the value of H3 from the refrigeration tables corresponding to TC. If TC is given, naturally it will be the same condenser temperature corresponding to that particular value of the TC. So you can see the value of enthalpy H3 corresponding to TC or PC, either of these. Now there is, before I explain you about how to calculate H2, I would like to tell you one more thing. This is point number 3. Okay, and I told you at state point 2, the temperature could be 70 degrees Celsius, and from process 2 to 3, the temperature, let us say, is 40 degrees Celsius. Okay, now when I say condenser temperature, during the process 2 to 3, the pressure is constant. This is a constant pressure line. So this is a constant pressure line. But the temperature is varying from 2 to 2 dash because the refrigerant is losing heat. At 2 dash, the temperature is 40 degrees Celsius. At 3 also, it is 40 degrees Celsius. So condenser temperature is not 70. Condenser temperature is actually 40 degrees Celsius only. Okay. So during 2 to 2 dash, it is the sensible heat loss, and this sensible heat loss is about 10 to 20% of the total heat loss from 2 to 3. Okay, so from 2 to 2 dash, it is the sensible heat loss which corresponds only to the 20 or 10% of the total heat loss from 2 to 3. That is why even if we calculate the average temperature from 2 to 3, it will come about to be only 41 or 42 degrees Celsius. So we say that the condenser temperature is only 40 degree Celsius. So I hope this is clear to you. Now let us see how to calculate the value of H2. Now during process 1 to 2, the process is of isentropic compression, and during this process entropy will remain constant. S1 is equal to S2. So what I can do is I can calculate the value of S1, which is equal to Sg. What is Sg? Sg is the entropy of the dry saturated vapor, and this value I can calculate corresponding to the evaporator temperature Te. And this value I can directly read from the refrigerant tables actually, or there are refrigerant tables and charts. You can take any one. There are different authors for it. Mathur and Mehta is one of the authors. Then Kurmi also is publishing this refrigerant tables and chart, or Rajput. Maybe any one table you can see. If you have a book, the tables would be given at the end of the book also. But I would say that you take a separate refrigerant tables and chart. That would be more helpful, because uh, the tables which are given at the end of the book will be giving values over a uh, larger difference of the temperature and pressure. For example, the first value, if it is at 5 degrees Celsius, the next value may be given at 10 degrees Celsius. But in tables, it is given at a difference of about 1 degree Celsius or 2 degrees Celsius. So that would be better for you. Okay. Now, having calculated the value of S1, we know that S1 is equal to S2. Okay. S1 is equal to S2. Now, my purpose is to calculate H2. So what I can do is I can consider that the refrigerant at state point 2 is behaving like a perfect gas. So what I can do is I am considering it is behaving as a perfect gas at state point 2. So what I can do is I can use this particular equation, which is TdS is equal to dH minus VdP. Now what I will do, this equation I am going to use for the process 2 dash to 2. And during this process, as you know, the whole process 2 to 2 dash and from 2 dash to 3, it is a constant pressure process. So change in pressure is 0. That means pressure is constant. So in this equation, this term VdP will be 0, and we are only left with TdS is equal to dH, or ds is equal to dH by T. Then what we can do is we can integrate this equation between 2 dash to 2, and the value of dH is CPV dt by T now. Now what is CPV? CPV is the specific heat of vapor refrigerant. Specific heat of vapor refrigerant. So this value will be given to us actually in the numerical problem. So when we integrate this equation, we get S2 minus S2 dash is equal to CPV log of T2 minus T2 dash. Now you just see this diagram once again. What is T2 dash? T2 dash is nothing but it is equal to Tc. Tc is condenser temperature, and this would be given to us in the numerical problem. So T2 dash is Tc. This is given to us in the numerical problem. This is also given to us, specific heat of the refrigerant vapor. And S2 we have already calculated, and S2 dash. What is S2 dash? S2 dash is nothing but I have written here S2 dash is Sg corresponding to Tc value. Okay, S2 dash is Sg corresponding to Tc, and Tc is already known to me. So I can see the value of Sg from the refrigeration tables. So I know all the values S2, S2 dash, CPV, and T2. Four values are known to me. Only unknown is T2. So this is the only unknown. So what I can do is using this equation, I can calculate the value of T2. So you can see here, only unknown is T2, and it can be calculated using the above equation. Once T2 is calculated, we can find out the value of H2 from this equation. What is this equation? It is DH is equal to CPV into T, and then we can integrate it between 2 dash to 2. Now DH is always equal to CP into T, or H is equal to CPT. So DH will be equal to CPDT. So here we have used this particular equation for calculating the enthalpy at state point 2. So when we will integrate this equation, we will get H2 minus H2 dash is equal to CPV E2 minus E2 dash. So this will give us H2 is equal to H2 dash plus CPV T2 minus T2 dash. T2 dash is known to us. This is equal to TC. E2 we have just calculated. CPV is already known to us. H2 dash. Yes, H2 dash is not given to us. H2 dash is nothing but Hg corresponding to Tc. So the condenser temperature is already known to us. So I can always see this value of dry saturated vapor from the refrigeration tables corresponding to the condenser temperature. So this value is also known to us. So this is now known to me. So I can calculate the value of H2. So H2 is calculated, hence COP can also be calculated. So this is the end of the lecture here. If you have any questions, you can ask me. I have explained you about the working of the vapor compression cycle. Then I have explained you what is the value of the. I have explained you about the analysis part. I have told you how to calculate the values of H1, H2, H3, H4, and then how to calculate the COP, and explained the procedure of calculating the enthalpy at state point 2 also. So now you tell me, if you have any questions, you can ask me right now. Tell me questions. I hope that all of you are listening to me, or at least some might have gone after logging into this. So if you have any question, you can ask. So Vijender Kumar is saying, no sir, all clear. So anybody else, if they have to ask any question, they can ask. Otherwise, I have recorded this video. I will load it on YouTube. And if you have any problem, you can once again listen to this lecture.
Sir, I have